Hello, 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 everybody. If I could please have your attention. I am a short girl and I am standing up on a stage, and I would like to have your attention. Thank you. This is when the theater kid in me kicks in, so if things seem a little weird, it's because I'm a drama kid. Spirit fingers. Thank you guys for joining us. We are the panel that is talking about activism and advocacy in a post-Roe world. Reclaiming Rights is our panel. So thank you all for being here. Take your time getting your seats. I'm just going to talk, if you don't mind. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just introduce myself. My name is Cy White. My sticky won't stick, so it's right here. I am Cy White. I am the managing editor of Austin Woman magazine. And I am here because Madeline asked me to be here. And I love Madeline. This is obviously not about me. It's about this incredible panel of formidable women. And so I will allow them to introduce themselves in a couple sentences. We'll start right here. We'll just start down the line.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Elise Hogue. I am of Texas, but do not live here now. I think I'm the only person on the panel who does not live here now, but I jumped at the chance to come back. I am a lifelong activist, strategist, social change maker who has worked on all sorts of issues, but spent much of the last decade running NARAL Pro-Choice America, a national abortion rights organization. And then for the last 2 years, I have moved back to multi-issue and actually global work. So I get to actually look at global trends of reproductive oppression and its relationship to rising authoritarianism around the world, which is not that uplifting, but there are great lessons in there. And I am a proud supporter of and investor in Unified because as a lifelong organizer, I deeply believe in the tools that allow us to connect with one another.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Martin. I am the current interim executive director at Avow, Texas, formerly NARAL Pro-Choice Texas. We use politics and education, community outreach, advocacy, legislative work to bring back abortion access at this point. That's sort of our goal. And I've been with the organization for about 10 years. I started as an intern. And now interim executive director. How I got here, I don't know. But yeah, so excited to be here and chat with everyone today.
Sorry about that. Mic drop. Hi, I'm Donna Howard. I'm a state representative here in Travis County in Austin and have been for the past 17 years, actually. I am the oldest person up here, probably the oldest person in the room. I came of age before Roe, okay, somebody's shaking their head, but I came of age before Roe v. Wade. I came of age when we were doing the same kind of work now that we were doing then. It's incredible to me, and I think a lot of people of my generation, that we find ourselves back here again. But I am the chair of the Women's Health Caucus in the House of Representatives here, and have had, I guess you could say, the honor and privilege, but also, unfortunately, been in the position of having to defend women's reproductive health care rights for the whole time, basically, that I've been in the legislature, and been really focused in recent times in particular on finally getting past looking at just rights, but looking at reproductive justice. We've left so many people out of this. I think now we're very, very focused on the fact that we've got to bring everybody on board with the activism to make the changes that we need.
And I'm Wendy Davis, and Representative Howard may indeed be the oldest person on the stage, but she can kick all of our asses on the running trail, all of us. She has this thing where she runs her age every year, and yeah, whatever. But yes, just look for her on the running trail, and you will be impressed. I am a former colleague of Donna's. I was in the Texas Senate for 6 years, and I founded a nonprofit in 2016, the year that I thought Hillary Clinton was, going to rise up and save us all. And we thought we would be working on a very gender proactive agenda. And unfortunately, of course, the opposite occurred. Deeds Not Words trains young women in high school and college age how to use their voice to help make the kind of change that they want to see. And then I started a fund in reaction to Senate Bill 8 to defend people who may get sued if they were trying to provide abortion care and were caught in Senate Bill 8's umbrella. It's called Defend the Front Line, and we've raised about $500,000 for that defense fund. And then 3 weeks ago exactly, I joined Planned Parenthood Texas Votes as senior advisor to that organization. And I'm really excited to be part of that family now.
Wonderful, wonderful. You are allowed to applaud and make noise by all means. Please do that. I know I'm speaking a little soft on the mic. I had a mimosa. But you are allowed to be as loud as you need to be. This panel is not necessarily going to be as lighthearted as the candidacy panel. So what I would like to do, if it's okay with you all, is to sort of just take a collective breath, because we're going to be talking about some things that make all of us angry. So let's just together on 3 take a big inhale and then exhale. So 1, 2, 3. And then release. And now we're breathing in all of the love and breathing out all of the bullshit. And these fine women are going to sort of help us navigate how to get through that. This first question, I do want to sort of start at the end with Miss Wendy. I call everybody Miss with their first name. I apologize if that's offensive to anybody. Just set me straight as the child on the panel here. Miss Wendy, and then going along the line, all of you in some way have been very active in terms of advocacy and activism when it comes to reproductive rights. So when Roe was overturned, I sort of want to get your mindset where you were when that happened, and how your perspective on how to move forward has shifted since then.
So for me, the stark moment was listening to the Supreme Court when Dobbs was being argued. And it was very clear that Roe was going to go away. That was my moment of sorrow and tears and anger and upset. And when Dobbs was made public, it felt a fait accompli to me at that point. So I had already kind of dealt with it. But I'll never forget where I was in the moment listening to that Supreme Court argument. And it felt surreal, but also predictable in some ways. We knew this is where we were headed. We understood, particularly in a state like Texas, what that landscape already looked like because of Senate Bill 8 and the fact that it had cowed people from trying to seek the care that at that time should have still been legally provided to them. And we understood how tough the road ahead was going to be, what the impact of that was going to be. And those were all of the feelings, of course, that were going through my heart and through my head.
Yeah, I ditto pretty much what Wendy said. When Senate Bill 8 passed in May of 2021, I don't think people really recognized the fact that we no longer had the courts to count on. And we're anticipating that this, like previous obstructions, the court would certainly intervene and prevent that from happening. But because of that unique private cause of action, that wasn't going to be the case. So when Senate Bill 8 went into effect September 1 of 2021, Texas became a state with a de facto ban on abortion. at that point in time, and we started experiencing what the real consequences were going to be. I don't think the rest of the country even understood what was going on here at that time. It was absolutely unbelievable that Texans were being denied the constitutional protections we had at that time that every other American was getting. I was definitely sad and angry and all that, but I was dumbfounded by that in particular. So when the decision actually came down, we had Senate Bill 8, and then December of 2021, we had SB 4 go into effect, and no longer having access basically to medication abortions. We had the leak that happened the following year. I mean, so many things happened before we actually had the decision. And then there was another month after that before the judgment was rendered. So the day of, I just know that I was talking with my staff, who, the executive director of our Women's Health Caucus, Christine Ilana, she was out with COVID, like so many people were during that time. And we were just listening to what was going to be the opinion together, over the internet, and just immediately going into action about what are we going to do here? What are our next steps? How are we going to frame this? What are we going to do to call to action and all those things? So it was really a matter of just revving up and knowing that there was going to be a long haul ahead of us. But I guess to reiterate, too, just what I said in my intro, coming of age at the time I did and being here a half century later, seeing this unfold, knowing that the vast majority of women, all of childbearing age, have known nothing but that protection and that choice being available, that ability to direct your own destiny, that foundation of democracy. You do not have a democracy if you do not have self-determination.
Hallelujah.
Was overwhelming.
Yeah, y'all covered quite a bit of the feelings I think that we were all going through. I think like Representative Howard mentioned, because we were already essentially living under abortion ban, the day it actually came out and even the leak, it was a gut punch. It was exhaustion. However, because, I think red states in particular have been sounding the alarm for years that this was coming and that we needed to prepare for it, and not necessarily everyone listening to that. I think there was unfortunate validation in what we were saying, like this was the warning, this is what we were going to see. But yeah, after living under an essential abortion ban, what happened on the day of Dobbs was, oh shit, now all these Texans that are leaving the state numbers that they can travel to are going to start to dwindle. And it was the heartbreak for them, just knowing that that was going to be essentially what was going to come of it. So yeah.
I had sort of the inverted experience as Wendy, in that, like Donna and Emily and Wendy have said, there were so many of us who had been saying, this is where we're going, unless we take some real significant turn at some point, this is the destination that we're heading to. And, I had written a book about that came out in 2020 as a last, hey, my book was really about federal Democrats waking up to what was happening and the need for much more aggressive federal strategies, and not to suspect that the states could do this on their own. So when I listened to Dobbs, I was like, yep. And when the draft decision was leaked, I was like, yep. And then for some reason, I was just coincidentally in transit when the decision came down, and I was landing in Richmond, Virginia on my way to North Carolina, and my phone started going insane. And when I realized what it was, I actually had I'm not too proud to admit it, I had a full-blown panic attack. I got off the plane, I found a corner in the airport, and I was shaking and sobbing. And it took my husband, who was on the phone with me, about 45 minutes to get me to stand up and walk to where I needed to go next. And I really had to unpack that because, like, no one was more prepared than the people on the stage for the inevitability of it. But I think what was so visceral for me was a few things. Like, we couldn't count on the people that we needed to listen to us to stop this. And now there is no easy solution. It is a long, I'm sure you guys had the same experience. All of a sudden your phone's ringing and everyone's like, what do I do? And I'm like, I mean, there is no one thing you can do now. It's like, this is a long path. So you have to commit to the long path. The second thing that sent me into the panic attack is this is an end game. Like, abortion rights is central to the agenda. But this is the beginning, right? And Texas experiences that, acutely, like some other red states. It's really about control, and it's about control of how people be in the world and live their lives, and what defines family, and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And it's a very narrow definition, and it's terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying if you let yourself go there. And then, the thing that I think really I think the rest of the question was like, how have you thought about doing things differently, which I think is kind of why we're all here, is it has to be yes and, right? Like, this is and has always been an assault on democracy, first and foremost, because democracy breeds diversity, breeds pluralism, all of the things we take joy in that threatens the status quo. And so we have to do the service work of making sure every person who needs an abortion gets it. We have to do the work at the municipal and state and federal level to pass legislation. But we have to get very serious about what radical reparation of democracy looks like in this country. That's court expansion, that's voting reform, that's all of the things, because they have always gone hand in hand, and the more we silo them, the longer it will take us to get to where we need to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to sort of jump off of something that you mentioned, sort of about the ripple effect of this. And I want to sort of get your perspective first, and anyone who would like to answer sort of the repercussions of this, as sort of the rallying cry of this has been, is that reproductive rights are human rights. And it's more than just about, can I get an abortion or can I not? It's about health, and it's about health for a wide variety of communities. And one of the big things that I think a lot of people might know but not realize is that the maternal mortality rate for Black women especially is almost 3 times higher than that of white women. You take that into account, and you take into account how this is going to affect rights for transgender women, for intersex women. And I sort of want you to talk a little bit about how this decision affects these various communities.
Yeah, I mean, badly. And I think it's true that the more you narrow healthcare, the people who had a challenging time accessing healthcare in the first place, which are the more vulnerable, the more marginalized communities, the more it exacerbates that situation and turns it into desperation. And so they're almost impossible to separate. And I would also expand on that by saying abortion care is health care, and an assault on abortion care and abortion rights is an assault on freedom, right? And so, it is really important. Sai and I were talking about this upstairs, but I wear the shirt as often in public as I can. This is from a group called Mothers of Gynecology in Montgomery, Alabama, and it serves as a reminder that the things that you talk about, the gynecological care that women, particularly cis women in this country, have taken for granted our entire lives, cis white women, I should say, came out of reproductive oppression. That the original gynecologist operated without consent on enslaved women. They had names, Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy. And so there has always been a two-tiered system with regard to health and freedom. It has always disproportionately affected those with fewer rights, less visibility in society. And I guess, you know, the opportunity we have now, should we choose to accept it, is to recognize that in this long pathway forward to reclaim abortion rights, we can do it in a way that was different than it was done the first time. We can do it in a way that recognizes these rights and this need for access as all or nothing, right? Like, no, you make no exceptions. You include everyone, because that is the only way that democracy will ever live in reproductive health care and reproductive rights.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think we need to be looking at abortion care as part of a larger inclusive health care. And that's intersectionality, that's inclusiveness. I mean, if you look at what's happening at the state legislature with the attacks on trans folks, I mean, the language, the goals, the tactics are exactly the same that they used on the attacks on abortion care. And so we knew, like, once they took abortion, they're going to come for other things. And I think it's activists, it's our job as movement leaders and participants to make sure we're being inclusive in our words, in our language, and in our actions, because if we're not all coming together because we all have the same goal and we're still like isolating or thinking of like abortion care as this piece and trans rights as this piece, then we're doing it wrong, because it's all the same. And so we all need to come together and do that. And I think some of what went wrong is, you know, we focused on abortion being a women's issue, and it is, but it's also a trans issue. It's also a non-binary issue. So if we're not including all these people in the conversation, then we're leaving them behind. And I think by leaving them behind, we're missing out. We're missing part of the narrative. We're missing part of the story. And so I think a lot of that needs to continue to be included. Yeah.
Oh, there's just so much here. Without getting too much into the weeds of what's happening at the legislature, what this does remind me of is just this last week, we had a hearing on a bill that I have that is to eliminate sales tax on a variety of products that women use, period products. I used the terminology in laying out the bill that said people who menstruate at one point. I use the terms women too. I'll say I go back and forth with what I say. But I started getting these attacks on Twitter from folks like, oh, can't you just say women? You know, it's just, we have such an uphill battle at the legislature right now with all of these things. But I'm sorry, I just thought of that, and I just wanted to mention that it is very toxic over there right now in regard to talking in real terms about the reality of inclusion and the people who are part of our community. But I also want to mention, following up on something, I don't even know if it's in regard to your question, it was something I was thinking about though while y'all were talking, and I think Wendy too, you, talking about the inevitability of what happened as a result of the 2016 election. You know, we heard from Trump that he was going to appoint people to the Supreme Court who were going to overturn Roe. We heard that. We heard that. To me, the fact that we didn't defeat him at that point in time is still pretty incredible when I look back on it, because he did exactly what he said. I'm reminded of the documentary Reversing Roe, where they interviewed a gentleman who heads up an evangelical group for the country, who said how they worked with Trump and they looked past some of his indiscretions, whatever that is. Indiscretions is a light term for whatever that is. And he mentions that in one of the debates between Hillary and Trump, where they were asking about abortion, and Hillary gave her usual kind of thing about, making it legal, safe, and rare. Trump's answer was basically, they want to be ripping those babies out at 9 months, whatever. It was some ridiculous thing he said. But this person with the evangelical group said, that's when we knew he was ours. We didn't put those words in his mouth. He said that. And they were 100% behind him, despite everything else about that man. And we let him get elected. And he made those appointments and put us where we are. And we do not have the judicial support that we once had. And we are not going to have it until we make some of the changes, expanding the court, whatever we need to do here. We are stuck with this. And it is not just the Supreme Court. It's the federal appointments that were made to federal courts. It's what we're seeing here in Texas, where whenever anything comes up, it gets referred to particular courts where we have judges who have been appointed by Trump and who are making decisions that are not in our best interest. So I did not answer your question because I don't even remember what it was now.
She was preaching.
There's just so much to talk about here, and so I'm sorry. I was reacting to what other people said, but I'm going to stop now.
No, I agree. There's so many thoughts going on in all of our minds, and I'm sure all of your minds too. One of the things I was thinking about when you said that, Donna, about being attacked on Twitter for talking about people who menstruate, they are so purposeful in silencing the language that helps to educate and to bring us all into a community of care for each other, right? They're purposeful. They want to separate us and make these things feel like they're not about us. They're about other, right? And it's so important that we hold on to our inclusive language as a way to push back into community with each other, come into community and stay into community with each other, because we are only as strong as we're going to need to be to push back on these things if we are. And the other thought that I had about abortion is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. Every time I tweet on anything to do with anything happening on reproductive rights, I always hashtag abortion is healthcare. And I think it's up to all of us to continue to normalize abortion as very much a part of our necessary health care that we've been entitled to, for the last 50 years. And I think that coming forward with our stories is such an important way to do that. And you probably saw this last week when 5 very brave women came forward and shared their stories from their pregnancies that they needed to terminate for a variety of reasons, that they chose to terminate, that they saw as needing to access health care. And I know it was just a little sliver of why we seek abortion in our lives, but what was important about it was that they helped people who might think, I'll never have an abortion, I don't support abortion. It made them think, maybe I could see myself in that situation. And I think it's just really important that we continue to bring stories forward from people who are trans, from people who are non-binary, from people who are choosing abortion because they have children already and they absolutely cannot afford another child in their lives. Because when we make these stories particular, we also make them universal, right? And so I think that's a big part of the road ahead, in what our organizing can and should look like. It's talking out loud about this and the challenges that are being created by virtue of it, and also reminding corporate America that when you decide you're going to come into a state like Texas, be forewarned that this is what you are exposing the people who work for you to, and be prepared to be a part of the fight and the solution. And I think we should all begin to make that demand on people who employ individuals in this state. We need you to be a part of making this state a welcoming place, not only for your employees, but for your consumers as well.
Could I elaborate on that, if that's okay? It's kind of, I think, where you were going to go next anyway. Absolutely. And in terms of activism and how we can take some action, clearly we have got to reach out to the business community and make sure that they stand up for the things that they're saying they want to see happen here. If you remember back in the 2017 legislative session and the bathroom bill, that was stopped.
That's right.
Because everybody showed up. The business community showed up, the tech community showed up, law enforcement, faith community, advocates, everybody came together. Now, I will say we also had a Speaker of the House who was a gatekeeper and said, not on my watch. And that helped too, to have that leadership. But it made a difference. And right now, we have legislation that has been proposed that is anti-business,
That's right.
as well as discriminatory. I mean, let's get down just to the bottom line of business. There is legislation that says you lose your tax incentives if you help your employees access health care that's legal in another state. You can't get the benefits of the franchise tax that we have if you provide insurance coverage that encompasses abortion health care. Seriously? This pro-business state is going to dictate to businesses what they can and cannot do for their employees? I mean, we saw them in 2017 stand up for non-discrimination and loudly and clearly say, our employees expect us to not be discriminatory in our hiring practices, and we cannot support this. Where are they now? We need the business community, the tech community to show up like they did then and say, no. We have a right to help our employees access the health care that they deserve. And so I just wanted to follow up on that because she had just laid the groundwork for that. And I think that's a really important piece of activism that we can take with us and do something very concrete about.
Absolutely. And so in sort of encompassing all of this, I just want to ask really quickly, are we pissed yet?
I'm so mad right now. I'm shaking.
Are we ready?
Right now.
Are we ready to do some shit?
Yes.
Are we ready to F some S up? So that's what I want to sort of end on. We came into this event with the amazing CEO Cheyenne saying feelings of joy. And that's what even despite what's happening, that's something that we have to cling on to. And I think the best way for that is concrete action. And so with the ladies who have such expansive experience in activism, advocacy, and organization, could each of you, in just a couple sentences, give people some hope and some guidance into what to do next, right? What do we do? Because most of us feel like, well, I'm not an organizer, I'm not I'm an activist, what the hell can I do? I'm just a me. I'm a small person on a stage. What can I do?
Oh, goody. Give hope. Ooh, okay. I'm just kidding. I think that there is hope. I mean, like Elise mentioned, we're basically starting from scratch. And we all know Roe was the floor. Like, it was barely protecting us. So we only have up to go from here. So I just want to start by saying that, like, there is potential and there is a way, and we can make it stronger. We can hopefully make the the vision for the world that we have stronger and make abortion more protected than it was prior with Roe v. Wade. So actions, we're an advocacy organization. I'm always going to ask for your support and joining us at the Capitol, working with Representative Howard, working with Wendy and her team at Planned Parenthood Texas Votes. There is testifying, there is talking to your legislators. Also, if you're not in Austin, go to their home office. Like, go to their in-district office and harass them, because they expect it at the Capitol, but sometimes when you surprise them at their home office, they're not as happy. So, there are things that we can be doing. Obviously, voting is important, but I also know, all right, I feel like I'm voting the right way. I'm hearing that I'm voting the right way, and it's not making any difference, which we can go into all the reasons for why that is, but especially here in Texas. But obviously, I still encourage people to vote, and I also think talking about abortion is so important. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to people that maybe you're not thinking, you have no idea where they stand on the issue, because you'd be surprised at how supportive people are, especially when you personalize the issue. Avow's been doing a lot of work around deep canvassing, which I don't know if everyone knows what that is, but instead of normal canvassing where it's a transactional, hi, vote for this candidate, or I hope you're registered to vote, we spend up to an hour talking to the people and talking to them about abortion. And our trial started last year in a suburb of Dallas, and we spoke to probably, I think it was 300 to 400 voters. And so many of them, the first question you ask is, how do you feel about abortion on a scale of 1 to 10? And you end with that same question. And more than you would be surprised, people moved up on that issue because our canvassers were able to personalize that and able to really talk about it. And a lot of those people shared abortion stories they'd never shared before. They talked about not understanding what was going on, because a lot of people just don't know. And we have the privilege, it's what we do day in and day out, but not everybody does. So talking really does make a difference. And some of them didn't realize that the Republicans were the ones that were trying to ban abortion. They didn't there's just so much minutia that go into those conversations. So doing that, I think, is amazing. And I also think listening to the stories and sharing the stories of people that are the most impacted. So whether that's BIPOC folks, whether that's trans folks, I can admit I am not the most impacted community, so it's a privilege for me to be up on this stage. But we need to be listening to their leadership because we know that they know the issue.
Fabulous. Miss Elise.
Yeah, everyone on this stage is going to know way more about tangible actions you can take in Texas than I am. So listen to them is my number one. My number two is tell the truth. I mean, this gets back to when people are what can I do? Often I find people mean what's the one thing I can do to alleviate my guilt about this thing happening? And the truth is commit to something every day, every week, whatever is in your bandwidth, but know that this is going to it took 50 years to undo Roe. We want to do it better. It's going to take a long time. And be honest with people about that, because that is the essence of organizing, is the honesty and truth, saying, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm asking you to be too. And that requires a diversity of actions, some in the voting rights space, some in the court expansion space, some in the abortion fund. How do we get this person this service? So, I do want to end on hope, because it's the reason that I'm here. Wendy and I were talking about this upstairs. And by them, I mean the sort of Christian fascist nationalists that have taken over the Republican Party. Their dirty secret is there are not that many of them. Mm-hmm. There are way more of us. And that is the reason that they set out to break democracy when they wanted to rob people of their rights, abortion rights, LGBTQ rights, workers' rights, union rights, right? Like they knew they had to break democracy because they don't have the majority. And like, wow, what a simple fact to embrace. It is the reason that I love things like Unified, things that make organizing simple, because that is the sacred work, is recognizing we are the majority and making it real and owning it.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. 5 minutes? How many minutes? I have 10 minutes for questions. Who has some shit to say? We're going to pass mics to you guys. This lady and gentleman.
Thank you. So this is specifically for Representative Howard, but of course anyone can answer. So I'm young Gen Z. I've been passionate since middle school, so at times I feel like I'm losing that passion and losing the fight that I have, and I'm still young. How do you guys keep having that passion, keep having that drive for so long? I always say, like, my goal is to be Heather Booth when I'm her age, but how do I get to that age? How do I get to the point where I'm not letting all that dismissiveness get to me and continue to fight for people?
Wow, I don't know that I have the answer to that. For me personally, I think it's partially just as I was describing earlier, the incredulity that I feel that all the work we put into gaining rights and going backwards is not keeping me from wanting to go forward. It's encouraging me to push forward even harder because I know what's possible. And on a personal note, probably, and Wendy can relate to this too, we have grandkids now. And I cannot imagine not doing all I can to ensure they have a world that they deserve to have. It's really just as simple as that. I know from my longevity here that change is possible. And that's hope, I guess, that it is possible. And yes, there's huge fucking setbacks, but you don't let that stop you from moving forward. We can't stop. We were saying that upstairs. We cannot stop. We have to keep moving forward because what's on the line is our very democracy. Our very democracy. We can't stop, and I'm not going to stop.
Gentleman in the rose shirt had a question, and then... Oh, sorry. This gentleman back here. Right here in the corner, right here. And then we will get back to you, definitely.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Samuel Franco, and thank you all for being here and for doing what you do. So I've been on a quest since last summer to understand how men can get more involved in this fight. And on that quest, I've encountered everything from general apathy of men all the way to people saying, stay the hell out of it, because you're the reason we're here to begin with, right? Which I don't necessarily disagree with. But somewhere in between is a path forward for men to be more involved in this fight. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on how men can get more involved.
Show up and let others hold the mic. I mean, men still hold the disproportionate amount of power in this country, and as long as this is perceived just as a women's issue, which we've covered the terrain that it is not, it is much more expansive than women, but it is also a human rights issue and a democracy issue. It will always be. This is my deep experience running a national organization on this was abortion rights was always the first thing to go in the negotiations because things that disproportionately benefit people without power are the first thing to go, right? And so showing up on lobby days, doing your own writing of letters, but also to Emily's point, supporting the folks that are holding the mic and telling the stories, but literally supporting by standing behind them and saying, this person is speaking for me, really, really, really matters. And if I just might, it is really wonderful to me when men say, I have a daughter, I have a wife, so of course it affects me, and that's real, right? But also shifting that language to, it affects me because when anyone's human rights are disregarded, my I'm offended and my human rights are disregarded, so that it becomes intrinsic to our understanding of the highest element of human rights, that also matters.
I agree with everything Elise shared. All I would add is something we always say is everyone loves someone that's had an abortion. So even if you're a man, whoever you are, you love someone regardless whether you know you do. So just always keeping that in mind. But yes, agree with supporting the people in leadership.
I can just talk loud. So my question is about abortion access funds. So one of my very best friends is the head of the New York City Abortion Access Fund. She's the only paid staff member. There are part-time people that are on the board of directors. And I'm talking to her every other day, her just bawling. She is totally overwhelmed. And New York is talked about all the time as this exemplary access state, but 2 months into the year, they are already running out of funds, and they can barely support even New Yorkers because there's just an influx of people coming from other states. So what I want to ask a little bit is just how can we re-energize like financial contributions to abortion access funds, for example, that are really doing the day-to-day work right now of helping people that are in need of abortions. Yeah.
A great question. You know, we have this tendency to get excited about things and angry about them and donate. And then, you know, we get busy and we forget to be as angry and as invested. And so your question is just a call to action, I think, in a really important and powerful way. You're right that these states that people are traveling to receive abortion care, many of them are not just providing the care, but they're also providing the resources to get people there and to pay for the procedures, because in states like Texas, although we have some incredible abortion funds here that have done phenomenal work, they are under threat. And in fact, I want to mention very specifically a lawsuit that was filed last night. I hope everyone saw it. It's exactly where we're going, where a man has filed a personal injury tort, a civil suit. Back to, you know, these private causes of action are their route, right? He has filed a private cause of action against his ex-wife. Not her, actually, because the law gives her some safety, against 3 people that helped her to access abortion medication in the state of Texas. And one of them is with one of these organizations. And it's their desire to cow these funds into the corner and to make them so fearful of providing help that they are going to wind up exactly with what's happening right now. And that is their strategy, is to create the most fear-filled environment they possibly can. That's what they did with Senate Bill 8. And unfortunately, I think sometimes our behavior invites that continued strategy because it works so well. That's why I started that fund, to try to defend people who are going to stand up to that, right? And so for everyone here, please donate to an abortion fund. Look at Colorado, New Mexico, New York. They are raising money so people from our state can go there. And then my other request, because my friends at Planned Parenthood would kill me if I didn't tell you about this, is we have our big Pink Out the Capitol rally day on April the 14th. And we would love for you to go to PlannedParenthoodTexasVotes.org and register to participate. We actually need you to register if you're going to go into the Capitol and lobby legislators, and we will give you the training to do that. But just so we know who to put where you're from, that sort of thing. But even if you don't register, please come to the rally, show up around 10 a.m. on the Capitol lawns, and just show you're upset. That's another really important thing. Continue to show it so that they won't count on the fact that their strategies have defeated us so badly that we've given up.
Absolutely. We actually are at the end of our time together. I appreciate you guys sitting here and listening and being very kind to me, but being very attentive to the women on the panel. Please ask them questions. Come up with them and ask them questions if you have any. But that's all that I have for you guys. So.